Welcome to Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free, a podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together. Starting now. Hey everyone, welcome back to Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free. I'm your host, Melanie, and today we're diving into a topic that I know so many of us struggle with, and that's outdated and unrealistic expectations and how they're holding us back from truly living our best lives. And we've carried around expectations about ourselves, about our bodies, about our careers, our homes, our family life, our lives in general. And these were handed down to us a long time ago and way before we had any say in the matter. So maybe it was a belief that we should have the perfect body, the spotless home, the high-powered career, or the ability to do it all without breaking a sweat. Here's the problem. So many of these expectations are outdated, unrealistic, and frankly, complete BS. So first, let's explore the burden of unattainable standards. So take weight loss, for example. Diet culture has shoved the same narrative down our throats for decades. Eat less, move more, and if you're not seeing results, you must not be trying hard enough. It ignores biology, mental health, and, real life. It also clings to outdated ideas of what healthy actually looks like, often wrapped up in an impossible standard of thinness. Outdated dieting expectations include things like believing you have to completely cut out entire food groups to lose weight, assuming that eating after 7 p.m. automatically leads to weight gain, or thinking that exercise must be punishing to be effective. And many of these ideas are simply not backed by science and only contribute to guilt and frustration, frustration and guilt and frustration, and we have enough of that in our lives already. So let me be honest. Outdated expectations about diet and weight loss are what got me over 200 pounds in the first place. In my years as a gymnast, when I was struggling with my weight, which we know now was a time when my body was at its most strong, its most flexible, at its healthiest. And while this was happening, I was constantly called names. Coaches called me fatty, piggy, tubby, hippo, cow. I mean, like all the terrible things a teenage girl should never hear. And this was not exclusively my experience. I was in a gym with other young women my age who looked the same, and we all heard these terrible things. So and I'm sure theirs, self-esteem totally shot. And when I quit gymnastics, I gained a lot of weight. And every time I tried to lose it, I kept trying the old-fashioned way, starving myself. I couldn't find a way to work out the way I used to because in my mind, working out meant training 4+ hours a day, 5+ days a week, like I did when I was a gymnast. And I don't know why I was so disillusioned. I just assumed it had to be that way when it didn't have to be that way. And as a result, I did nothing. Like I was completely paralyzed. So the starving didn't work. The cutting carbs didn't work. I really felt like I had to lean all in on the food aspect since the exercise wasn't happening. And none of this was sustainable and none of it worked. It took me until I was 30 to figure out the right way. which included a plan that was more flexible with food intake and encouraged exercise in more realistic ways. And I adapted to the food piece immediately. But I still had a really hard time believing that moving just a little could make any kind of impact. And I think I was also suffering from, or still suffering, I should say, from serious body image issues, which made me avoid the gym altogether. I didn't want to be the fat girl that people judged at the gym, forgetting that people at the gym are looking at themselves in the mirror. They're not really paying attention to other people. And if they were, who's to say that that really healthy looking woman didn't already lose the 65 pounds I was aiming to lose? I was forgetting that people in the gym might actually be inspired by someone on a weight loss journey and working really hard to get there. But stay tuned for an upcoming episode where I'm going to explore this experience way more thoroughly. So, anyway, it took me quite a while to realize the error in my thought process. But once I did, I started moving more. And essentially, I just took any chance there was to walk or to walk further. The time I was a merchandise manager for a lingerie manufacturer. Some of you may have heard the story already. And I was in a different mall every day. And there were some days I was in multiple malls. So, instead of, parking at the closest spot, I would park at the furthest spot. And I just got in walking wherever I possibly could. And that felt sustainable. So, I also want to talk about the psychological impact of outdated expectations. These unrealistic standards don't just impact our actions, they mess with our minds. The constant pressure to measure up to impossible ideals fuels anxiety, low self esteem, as I just mentioned, and even depression. For years, I battled feelings of failure because I couldn't stick to extreme methods. I believed were the only way to be successful in weight loss and fitness. And I internalized the belief that if I couldn't work out like I did as a gymnast, then I wasn't really working out. The shame and frustration and shame, frustration, that vicious cycle came with every failed diet attempt, only reinforced this damaging cycle. So it took a long time to rewire my thinking and accept that smaller, more realistic steps could lead to sustainable change. The same psychological struggle applies to clutter and home organization. The idea that our homes must always be pristine can create overwhelming stress and even a sense of failure. Clutter, when viewed through the lens of shame and guilt, and here we go again, guilt and shame and guilt and shame, isn't just a physical problem, it becomes a mental burden. We might feel like we can never measure up to the Pinterest perfect homes we see online, which leads to paralysis and avoidance instead of progress. So when we cling to these outdated expectations, we rob ourselves of the chance to feel accomplished and at peace in our own lives. The truth is, progress looks different for everyone, and real change happens when we work with our reality instead of working against it. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of societal expectations. Many of these unrealistic standards didn't just appear overnight. They evolved over time. They're shaped by culture, by the media, by industry interests. Decades ago, the ideal, for those of you who are listening, I'm using air quotes, the ideal female body was curvy. Then it shifted to thin, and now we're seeing a push towards hypertoned fitness. Home aesthetics have followed a similar trend, from elaborate, heavily decorated interiors to today's minimalist, perfectly curated Instagram aesthetics. The workforce has also changed drastically. There was a time when being a stay-at-home mom was the expectation. Then came the push for women to have it all, with careers and perfect homes and thriving social lives. without ever showing signs of exhaustion. How is that even possible? These ever-changing expectations leave us feeling like we can never quite keep up, no matter how hard we try. By recognizing that these standards are socially constructed and often unrealistic, we can start to free ourselves from their incredibly tight grip. The goal isn't to reject progress, but to acknowledge that our worth isn't tied to meeting every shifting expectation placed upon us. So, where did these expectations come from? Most of these expectations were not created by us. They came from parents, they came from teachers. In my case, they came from coaches, magazines, and now Instagram influencers and industries that profit off making us feel like we are not enough. Women in particular are often held to conflicting and exhausting standards. So, being independent but nurturing, work hard but don't neglect your family, be confident but not too confident. It's no wonder so many of us feel like we're constantly falling short. So, let's talk about how to release these outdated expectations. So, how do we let them go? Here's what I want you to focus on. 1, question the source. Ask yourself, where did I learn this expectation? Is it actually serving me, or is it just making me feel like crap? If it's the latter, it's time to let go of that mental clutter. 2, redefine success on your terms. If a perfect body isn't realistic, and spoiler alert, it's not, what does healthy actually mean for you? If a clutter-free, sterile home isn't the goal, what kind of environment makes you actually feel good? Okay, 3, embrace the messiness of real life. Progress is messy. Growth is not linear. Your home, your body, and your life are not meant to be perfectly curated Instagram feeds. The more we let go of rigid expectations, the more we can enjoy the life that we actually have right now in this moment. Okay, 4, set ridiculously simple goals. If you've listened to previous episodes or worked with me in the past, you know ridiculously simple is my catchphrase. One of my favorite strategies is breaking things down into small, achievable steps. Want to declutter? Start with 1 drawer. Still not right? Just focus on 1 item, shirts, socks, pens. Start in a way that is both meaningful to you and realistic for you to be able to do. So if you want to improve your health, you may start with 10 minutes of movement. Now that I know that 10 minutes of movement is a good thing, change happens when we make it manageable. Okay. And then let's just say it's time to move forward. Outdated and unrealistic expectations keep us stuck in a cycle of frustration and self-doubt. They drain our energy, they clutter our minds, and keep us from living life fully. The good news is you get to decide what expectations you keep and which ones you toss out for good. If you are ready to lighten your load physically, mentally, emotionally, I would love to help. My Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program is all about removing the clutter, the literal and the mental clutter that is holding you back. Let's rewrite the rules and create a version of success that actually works for you. Book a consultation with me, a free 30-minute strategy call just to get you started. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with your friends. They deserve to remove this mental clutter too. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media. Don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program to take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.